Hey guys, it's Jasper, and today I wanted to talk about map making and how I've been using it currently for my writing. In the last 3-4 months, I have made three main maps that I have been going back and referencing. I've made quite a few maps, but three successful maps which I've been able to go back and use as reference. And it's something that I don't think is necessarily helpful for everyone, but for my own story, because it is a fantasy story, it's a world that I've entirely invented, because the story involves a lot of mythology and history. One of the first timelines I made for this book was a timeline of the history of the world rather than actually a timeline for the story that takes place. And so I go back thousands and thousands of years. And so it's useful to have, for me, I needed a world map. Now, I had put off making a world map for a long time because I didn't know what the world looked like, and I didn't know, I just knew general kingdoms. And so one day I decided to sit down. I spent a writing session, like a 3 to 5 hour time slot, had a great big notebook, and I just sketched out the world as I imagined it. And I did it all in pencil, so that way as I go along with the story, I can change it, and I've already changed it a few times, but I can have a general idea, what it all looks like. And in doing that and having to make little decisions about the landscape, it made me think about the types of people that would live there. And that was really helpful because one of the things that I was hoping to get out of making a world map was establishing where are the main kingdoms, where are smaller kingdoms, where are rival kingdoms, where would certain wars or battles take place. Because a lot of this depends on the landscape itself. And certainly if you have a place where the land is largely broken up into small islands, you're going to have smaller kingdoms compared to where you have larger masses. You have the opportunity for a greater kingdom, but at the same time, if you're bordering other kingdoms, you have a lot of opportunity for invasion. So creating a large world map was a little daunting, but overall it's been really helpful. And one of the things I did to help myself, and I'm not sure if any of this is making sense, but one of the things I did after I made the world map was I cut out all these little colored dots, because in my story I have certain main people groups who are from the very beginning, and so each of them are assigned a color just for my own organizational sake. And so kind of like if you've ever played Risk, I took these little dots and then I put them all over the map to show, this is where their first kingdoms were, their second kingdoms, and this is how they expanded, So this one particular group, they expanded, they started all of the groups started in the middle, and then they expanded out, and so you can kind of see where their developments are. And some of the decisions I made were based purely off of just, well, I don't know, there's hardly any blue dots on the map, so I guess I'll add some more in. And then other decisions were made off of, this is what I know already with their history and with the world, so this is what would make sense. But in making some of the decisions where they weren't necessarily purposeful, it made me think, oh, well, I just kind of put, these blue dots here because there wasn't a lot of blue on the map, but actually now it's kind of forming like a west to east pattern development. And isn't that kind of interesting, because you've got like the mountains are here, and so they're always moving towards this place, which actually ties into something. And so in creating the world map, it gave me just a general sense, and it's something I've been able to go back and look at and use, and just to be thinking about kind of global politics and world things. The second map that I made was a zoomed in portion, because even though I have this great big world map, there is this tiny spot on it where my first story takes place entirely. It is actually kind of very comical. I have this great big huge piece of paper, and there's just this tiny spot, and it's like, that's where the whole story takes place. None of this really matters too much. So I did a close-up on that, and again, there were sort of similar things where there were places where I knew, okay, well, this village has to be here, and the cave has to be within, a night's walking distance. And there's also villages that are day walk apart from each other. and then there's this river, and that's got to connect to this lagoon and to this place. So there were certain things I knew, but there were other things that it didn't really matter too much. And so by combining those details, the things that you know and the things that are just like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll put a bunch of islands here, just because that might be neat. What it did was it created opportunity for me to derive story and character out of the landscape that was incidental. So the second map that I made was useful in narrowing in the space and establishing, well, this is where my story is really going to take place. So let me tease out some of the details there. And that map I've been using a lot. The last, I think like 2 weeks of writing sessions, I have been starting every writing session by referencing this map because it's an adventure story and I have these characters who are plotting out, okay, well, we need to go from here to here to here, or, a character says, okay, what's the plan? Where are we going? And I'm like, I don't know. What is the plan? Where are we going? And so then I pull out my map and I go, oh, okay, well, we have to, we're starting up here and then we've got to make our way to this island. And there's all these like tiny little islands in between. So we're gonna have to be careful, sailing. And as I'm kind of mapping my way through this map that I made just so that I could have a visual, it actually gives me more story to tell. Now that brings me to my third map that I made. My third map was a close-up of that close-up. So again, my first map was a world map. My second map was a close-up on the area where my story is actually taking place. And my third map has been a close-up on that map. And it actually has to do with sort of this island system that I had created. And it was something that was purely accidental, but now has become integral to the story. And I could see if I could show you. I'm hesitant to show you just because you have to protect certain details of the story, and I don't want to give things away, but let me see if I can make this work. I think if I hold it here, you can't see it too much. I'm gonna have to check this out. So this was the map that I did that was a close-up of my larger map. So this is my writing notebook that I put it in. My other notebook is like, it's huge. So this was a close-up, and this is where my whole story takes place. And there's this complex, these right here is a series of islands, and they're islands that I created just out of happenstance to facilitate something for this main kingdom here. But now it's become an integral passageway for my characters to venture through because there's certain things they have to get to go on their adventure. So I took that little place and then I put it onto a map here, so you can see the islands are a little bit bigger now. And what this allowed me to do was, because the problem I was running into is this last 2 weeks I have been referencing my map, but it's really small, and so I'm trying to write in the names of, islands as I'm coming up with them, or different passageways and waterways and things, or creating certain stories, and I didn't have enough room. So I wanted to do one that was bigger so that I could write in, this is a certain passageway, and this is what the cluster of islands is called, and this is the name of this particular spot, and this is where some rapids are, and that way I can track things a little bit better. So overall, what I've been using maps for in my story is, one, because it's a fictional world, because it's a world that I'm making up and is really only in my head. As somebody who is a very visual person, it's been helpful for me to cast those things out on paper and kind of come up with, like, spatially, where do these things sit? And also to come up with the things that aren't necessarily important, the things that are going to be overlooked, but are necessary in the way that if you're going to have an island, there's water around it, and eventually there's land, and so how far is that? And if somebody had to, like my characters do, if someone had to sail and navigate through this place, what would that look like? How much time would that take? Are there any rapids, waterfalls, passageways that are narrow, that are valleys where maybe goblins are hiding? It's always goblins, right? So what maps have helped me to do is visualize the things that I know, and also put to picture the things that I hadn't thought of, the unknown things. And from those unknowns, from the things I've had to fill in just to say like, I don't know, I guess there's hills here, or yeah, there's these creatures, they created a settlement here. And then as I'm putting my story together, I go, well, actually, if these creatures are here and I have this kingdom, is it possible that they have an alliance? Otherwise, why would, you know, this ruler allow them to take habitate, sorry, such a close by piece of land, you know? Or are they strong and they fortified, or what's the deal? But what I'm trying to say is, by making the maps, it's helped me to come up with more things for my story and really make it more and more real, which, if you're working on a story that you love, it is real for you. And it's exciting when there's things that make it more and more real. So I hope this has been clear. I'm not sure if it has been. I wish that I could show you guys more and more, but again, it's just really hard to show you the stuff that I'm working on, because there's certain things that when the book comes out, I don't know what are spoilers and what aren't, and I have to also protect my creative work. If you have any questions about this, if this was really confusing, I'm so sorry, and I can try to remake it if it was just bad. But if you have questions, comment down below. Let me know what you're thinking. Have any of you made maps for your world? Has this been helpful? How do you use maps? Do you not use maps? Are you working on a fantasy story? What's your world like? Comment down below. Let me know how you're doing. And as always, guys, let's be a community of writers who help each other out. Cheers.